It's a massive day for the channel as me and Nu are finally unveiling our top 50 big board ahead of the 2025 NFL draft. Now, me and Nu don't know who we have at where we have, so we're going to be reacting to these boards. It's going to be live. And as ever, I'm joined by friend of the pod, co-host, if you will, Nick Corbs, who's wearing a lovely Atlanta football top there, Nu.
Yeah, I believe my co-host got this for me last Christmas. Thought I'd share the love a little bit. And yeah, I'm so excited to do this top 50. It's the first one I've ever done properly. Really put thought into it. And I was in the library last week, about 3 hours doing this. I should be focusing on my essays, but instead I was ranking, 45 through 50 on the draft. And also there's more to come, We're going to do Diamonds in the Rough episode later. People who I don't think are quite top 50, but I still love. But I'm super excited to get into this, Dom.
Yeah, nice. We're definitely going to do like defensive, offensive gems. So make sure you subscribe for more NFL draft content and help out the pod. Leave a comment down below as well. Now,
Road to 1,000.
Road to 1,000, exactly. Now, we're going to do this in groups of 5. Nu, and we're not going to go into these guys as prospects. If you want to hear more about that, we're going to be doing mock drafts. We've done positional breakdowns. What we're doing here is we're more trying to explain why we have players where we have them. Are they higher or lower? Are we in line with consensus? Let's start then with your top 5. Nu, read them 1 through 5 for me.
So at the number 1 overall player in my draft, I got Abdul Carter. Second, I got Teto McMillan. Third, Will Campbell. Fourth, Cam Ward. And fifth, Travis Hunter.
Oh my God.
That is my 1 through 5. So just quickly want to talk about it. So the reason why I have Cam Ward so high is I've done positional value does come factor for me for my top 50. Some people would have running backs at 1 and QBs down at 40. I think that's a bit of a lie, to be honest with you. It's more about where I would draft them more than how good they are as a player. If that makes sense, there's a bit of a combination of both, which is why I have Cam Ward so high. But those top 5 players, I'm a big fan of them both. I think that's an ironclad top 5, Dom.
I think Cam Ward at 4 is high.
He's going to be the number 1 overall pick.
But that doesn't... So I've done mine a bit different. I've done mine kind of... I've looked at mine through the lens of talent, essentially. And there is a bit of positional value factored in there, definitely. Cam Ward's got a bump for me. But my 1 through 5, 1, Abdul Carter, the edge rusher from Penn State. 2, Travis Hunter. 3, Teto McMillan. 4, Ashton Genty. 5, Mason Graham. Now, for me, Nu, I think not having those 5 in whatever order... I think you're wrong. I hear your Cam Ward take, I hear the positional value take, but I think Carter, McMillan, Genty, Hunter, and Graham are the clear 5 best players in this draft. I think you've unfairly, and you've got Will Johnson in there. So where do you have Mason Graham?
I will see him in the next. I have Mason Graham at number 10, Dom. But I'll give you our players. But I think what's important here is, for example, it always grinds my gears when I'm doing a PFF mock draft, as many of our listeners might do as well. And Shedeur Sanders is ranked number 45. If your team were to pick Shedeur Sanders at number 20, you'd be over the moon. Therefore, he can't be the 45th ranked player.
I don't think you would.
Any sense.
I don't think you would be over that. I would not be over the moon if my team picked Shedeur Sanders.
If you're, for example, the Seahawks and Shedeur Sanders fell, you'd be over the moon with picking him. That does not play that. Really, do you think he's that bad?
I don't think he's that good.
Well, you're going to have a big issue with my next 5 then, Dom.
Oh my God, this is a disaster. Okay, so go through your 6 through 10.
At 6, I've got Aman Membu, the tackle at Missouri.
Nice.
7, Ashton Genty. 8, Shedeur Sanders. 9, Tyler Warren. 10, Mason Graham.
I think having Shedeur Sanders now over Mason Graham is disgusting. I think it's disgusting. I think that might be one of your worst takes ever. Shedeur Sanders over Mason Graham.
Positional impact has to factor into a list, and Shedeur Sanders will make more of an impact than Mason Graham will, at least in the first 5 years.
But then you got to have Jackson Dart at 15. What's your point?
We'll see. Dom. We'll see what the
quarterbacks can impact the game more than any running back, technically. So why do you have Ashton Genty ahead of Shedeur Sanders?
Because I think for Ashton Genty, for example, to be picked at 7, I would still think that is quite good value for the player, if that makes any sense. Are you sort of catching my drift here? So Ashton Genty, even though he might be the number 1 overall talent, you still got to factor in that position of value, which factors him slightly lower, which I think is fair.
Yeah, but my point is that Will Howard will have more of an impact on the game as a backup quarterback, arguably, than Travis Hunter will as a running back. If we're looking at the pure positional value argument, I'm not saying that should be the case, but I'm trying to point a flaw in your logic here that you've got Shedeur Sanders in your top 10. That is baffling to me. No?
Well, also, Dom, I am high on Shador, much higher on Shador than you are as well. I think that is an important thing to mention.
I think we'll talk
I-
about. I think we'll
yeah.
talk about Shador when he's revealed on mine.
Oh, okay. So what's your 6 through 10 then, Dom?
So my 6 through 10, Tyler Warren, the tight end from Penn State. 7, Will Campbell, the offensive lineman from LSU. 8, Amar Membu, the offensive tackle from Missouri. 9, Will Johnson, the cornerback from Michigan. And 10 is Malachi Starks, the safety from Georgia. I've looked at all of this in line with like Malachi Starks and Will Campbell, really. I've looked at this through the lens of talent. Now, with Will Campbell, obviously there's questions about arm length and wingspan, and it would literally be his 0th percentile in terms of he's got the shortest wingspan ever for a tackle, right? But he's just so damn good. And I think that you're getting a really solid player. Like, I think he's a top 10 player in this class. And I think that with Malachi Starks, I also think he's a top 10 player in this class in terms of talent. So yeah, positional value, fine. Safety, he'll go later. But if I'm looking at mine through like top 10 in terms of talent, I think Malachi Starks has to be in there. And that's why I find that your Shedeur Sanders take at where do you have him? 8?
I'm Shador Sanders at 8, yes.
I think that is bonkers. And that's absolutely bonkers. But those were our top 10s. You can see them on the screen now. Feel free to leave Newsome hate in the comments. Or me, if you disagree with me. Now, New, give me your 11 through 15.
Dom, I agree with what you just said. So I got Will Johnson, the cornerback out of Michigan, Malachi Starks, Jahdae Barron at 13, got Nick Warrior at 14, who I'm a big fan of, and Mike Green at 15.
Okay, all right. Talk to me about Nick Emenwari. Why do you have him so high?
I just love his physicality, Dom. I love his aggression, and I think him and Malachi Starks is a genuine debate. We spoke about it in the last episode we did, and we both agree Malachi Starks is a better football player, but you cannot teach what Nick Emenwari can do, and I think he's the biggest physical freak in this draft. He's so much potential, and I think he's a top 15 player.
I don't have Nick Emenwari as a first round pick, as a first round player.
Wow, okay.
I like what he does physically, but I think other than that, I don't think his tape's like that great. Like I think like someone like Watts has like better safety tape. There's other players out there as well. It's just for me, like if you're putting Nick Emenwari because he had a good combine. I'm not saying that you are, but I'm saying if one is ahead of other really talented players, I think that's a bit of a fumble. And you also had Jahdae Barron as well. Now Jahdae Barron is one that I've got lower. Talk to me about Jahdae Barron. I like him a lot, but not as much as you.
I thought for this year, I'm just quite high on this corner class, and I think he's a top 15 player. I was going through it, and the hardest thing is sort of saying how is a corner better than a tackle, or how is an edge
you've
better
looked
than
at
a
it
safety?
you've made a rod of your own back with the positional value argument.
I know, and corner is high on position value, obviously, but I think it is. I'm just a fan of him, and sort of just gut instinct. Obviously, this is subject to change, but I think he's a very good corner. I think his tape from last year is better than his tape from this year. Bit of an issue when his back's to the ball, but I'm still a big fan of him, and I still think he's a top 15 player.
Yeah, I really like Jahdae Barron. I think like you're getting like a kind of defensive Swiss Army knife. Like he plays free safety, strong safety, nickel, played corner now this year. Like he was kind of like a fringe first, second rounder last year, and has put some really good tape out there as a pure kind of boundary corner. So I really like Barron. But for me, again, there's just more talented players on there. So I'll go over now my 11 through 15. 11's where I've got Cam Ward. I think
fine.
I don't think he's a top 10 player. I think there's a bit of positional bump up there, not as much as you obviously, but like I like Cam Ward as my clear cut QB1. I think he's a playmaker. He's someone that can raise the floor of your offense pretty well. 12, I've got James Pierce Jr. Now, James Pierce Jr. is victim to the fall here, and there's character concerns kind of coming out. I can't speak to those. I don't know the guy. There's not even been like hard. It's not even like it's like a Deshaun Watson kind of like I've never met the guy. Like we've not had anything concrete as to actual tangible character concerns, at least that I know of. So I'm not trying to explain away anything. I just simply do not know. I've then got Kenneth Grant, the defensive tackle from Michigan at 13.
I think that's a bit high.
I love Kenneth Grant, man. I love Kenneth Grant. I think I was a bit hesitant at first. I had him kind of like 2021 before, but the more I've watched the other guys now and the more confident I am with them, I think you're just going to get a fantastic player in Kenneth Grant, like straight out of the box, which I don't think you're going to get with other players that are going to come after him. Now, I've not always been consistent with that argument. Sometimes for me, the potential does outweigh the current version of them. But for me, I think Kenneth Grant has got a better potential than he is currently as a player. And he's already out of the box a great player. Like, I think I like him at 13. I love him as a player generally, to be fair. 14, I've got Shamar Stewart. That's the flip side of my argument there. Like, not the production, has all the tools. I think I'd take a swing on him. I think he is very talented. And then I've got Josh Simmons, the offensive tackle from Ohio State at 15. Some would say would be the tackle one if he didn't get injured. Others would say, well, he only has this year, the only team he played against was like Mercer, another really bad one. So I have kind of gone in the middle there with Josh Simmons. I kind of sat on the fence a bit. He is behind Will Campbell, behind Aman Membu, but I think you're definitely going to get a really good player there.
So Dom, was that Mike Green as your edge 3 or 4 then? That is...
Yeah, he's fallen. He's fallen
wow,
for me since our edge rusher rankings.
I don't agree with that.
Because when you put these guys all together, it really does make you look at them through a different lens, right? Like, I tried to come at it from I'm not a specific team. I don't have a specific need. So it's not that I need a quarterback. Obviously, like, every team's board is going to look completely different because, like, it's about scheme. It's about what you need. It's about kind of like where you don't have a lot of cap given to, for example. Like, there's 1,000,001 different factors. For us, I'm just kind of looking at like talent and how sure I am that they're going to work. And I think with Mike Green, I'm less sure of him working out than Shamar Stewart, I think, when it's all said and done at the end of the day.
That is actually rage bait. Production translates. Production translates, Dom.
But Shamar Stewart has like 39 pressures.
How many? I know pressures versus sacks game. We're not going to get into it. This is a conversation for another day. But all I'm going to say is I have Shamar Stewart much lower.
Okay, so give me your 16 to 20.
So 16 through 20, I've got Luther Burden.
Oh, almost a snap there. I've got him at 17.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Calvin Banks Jr.
I've got him at 18.
Okay, Emeka Egbuka, wide receiver of Ohio State. Josh Connolly, the tackle out of Oregon. And then Jihad Campbell, the first linebacker on my big board at 20.
Nice. We've got a lot of overlap here. So let's talk about the players that we overlap with. I've got Jihad Campbell at 16.
Yeah.
I've got Luther Burden at 17. I've got Kelvin Banks at 18. Yeah. At 19, I've got Donovan Ezeraku from Boston College. And at 20, I've got Michael Williams. So let's then go through Jihad Campbell, Luther Burden, Kelvin Banks. I'm completely with you there, New. Jihad Campbell is my LB1, 100%. Not even close with Jalen Walker. Don't miss me with that ridiculousness. For me, linebacker's about floor, not about ceiling. Right, you want your linebacker to do his job. Otherwise, your defense is kind of get exposed. And what they need to do is they need to make plays at or around the line of scrimmage. They need to be able to cover, and they need to be able to rush the passer. Jihad Campbell can do all of those things, and I think it just makes him super versatile. I think he's fantastic in coverage. I think he's really, really good coverage linebackers, up there with some of the best in the league if those skills were to translate. And I think you're getting, linebacker's not the most valuable position, but I think with Jihad Campbell again, a bit like with Kenneth Grant, I'm really confident that you're going to get a damn good player with Jihad Campbell.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's so hard to evaluate linebackers, though, because they're so scheme dependent. And so many go to the NFL and sort of just like disappear, just sort of just being another defensive player. And you don't really hear about them again until they've signed in free agency somewhere for far too much money. But I really like Jihad Campbell. I think it's the perfect range for him to go in. Also,
Luther Burden.
Yeah, Luther Burden. It's so hard, Luther Burden. Like, he could be top 10 and I wouldn't say anything. He could be 30 and I wouldn't even have anything
I completely agree.
Again, he's a riser, a faller, prospect fatigue. Every single term you want to call Luther Burden, you could definitely do it. But for me at the Combine, it's sort of re-jogged my memory a little bit. And I think this is the perfect range for him in the draft and on my big board.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you there, New. I really struggle with Burden. It wouldn't shock me if in 2-3 years' time, everyone was like, oh my God, Luther Burden fell all the way to the mid-late teens, early 20s, and it was a steal of the draft. But it also wouldn't shock me if we're looking back at the draft and going, they took Luther Burden in the first round?
Yeah.
Like, he did not test well at the Combine. And I'm not just talking about a slow 40. They get tracked in all these drills, and Luther Burden was slow in the drills, and that concerns me more than the pure testing. Right, I don't need Luther Burden to run a 4.2. That's not what we didn't expect him to. But combined with like the lack of outside snaps, combined with the not great play speed when he was doing the drills at the Combine, the bizarre kind of dip in production, which we've explained multiple times, but like there's just enough red flags for me now on Burden's tape where I am pumping the brakes a little, because before I think it was like 11 for me, and so he has fallen. And then Kelvin Banks, the offensive tackle from Texas.
Yeah, so for me, just to quickly, not to jump ahead a little bit, I've got Josh Sims at 23. But all these three tackles, they are so close together. I think it's so much dependent on scheme fit. And
who's the third?
So I've got Kelvin
Banks,
Banks, Josh
Simmons.
Connolly at
Oh, Josh
19.
Connolly. Oh,
And
you're
then,
higher on Connolly than I
yeah,
am.
I am. But to be honest, if you were to sell me an argument, I could easily be convinced. I think these three guys are great. I think this is a good range for them. They all have pros and cons, and they're all more scheme dependent than others. But it literally just depends which team they're going to go to and which team values them more. And I don't have that strong an argument for any of them to be above any of them, apart from just how I evaluated them, the grade I gave them just happened to be higher.
Yeah, Calvin Banks to me has fallen quite a bit. He was like my fourth ranked prospect or something. At one
Really?
point. I was really high on him. As I've watched the others, I've kind of like mellowed on him. I think he's really good. For me, I think after Campbell, Membu, Simmons, Banks, I think there's quite a clear drop off for me at least until
Connolly.
Josh Connolly, and then
Okay.
I think that for me is almost kind of like the last of the pure tackles, and that is again dependent. Apparently, Kelvin Banks Jr. Some people have him as a guard, according to Dane Brugler. So that's a question, and also obviously with Will Campbell if he's going to play guard. But I really trust Kelvin Banks again. Like if you do get him in the teens, you're going to get a starting potential tackle, definitely a starting guard immediately, and that's great value at kind of in those teens. And then Donovan Ezaraku and Mikael Williams for me. I want to talk about them. Donovan Ezaraku is a player I love, right? A bit of a my guy. He reminds me a little bit of Laiatu Latu, not in how he plays, but in how he wins, in the sense that Donovan Ezaraku is a student of the game. Like he's got a massive roster of pass rush moves. He knows how and when to use them, can set offensive linemen up. He was speaking about it in the combine, saying that there's certain moves which you can only go to later after you've introduced some other moves. And he just knows the nuances of pass rushing super well, which to me just makes me feel really good about his projection. And then Michael Williams, again, I've kind of gone for like a flip-flop every time here with my edge rushers. Michael Williams is kind of the opposite, right? He's got all the tools. He's athletic as hell. I think he's just a kind of like a ball of clay at the moment, and he could be one of the best players in this class, full stop. But the production's not quite there. I think the way he was used at Georgia kind of hurts him. But I think that Michael Williams is a damn good player, even at 20. Like I think really what this cemented for me is that this draft, might not have like the top like elite quarterback prospects and kind of the really high end like wide receivers and stuff, apart from McMillan for us. But it is a damn good class, man. Like Michael Williams, if you're getting Michael Williams at 20, which isn't where I'm saying that he would go, but I think he'll probably go earlier than that. But like, I was looking at it, I was like, Michael Williams at 20, like this class is pretty decent.
Yeah, I remember watching Michael Williams for our Edge Rusher video, Dom, and I really liked him as well. His tape is really fun to watch, and he really jumps off the screen. And I've got him slightly lower, but he's someone who, as it's closer to draft day, I could really see rising up my board.
Okay, so now we're getting into the fun bit, because now it really is kind of like, the beauty is in the eye of the beholder here. I think anywhere kind of past 15, it starts to it gets pretty ropey. Now I've got some fun names I'm definitely going to talk about here, but you give me your 21 to 25.
So at 21, I got James Pierce Jr., 22, Colston Loveland, 23, Josh Simmons, 24, Kenneth Grant, and 25, Michael Williams.
Okay, so let's talk about Colston Loveland, because he is also 22 for me. So we have him exactly the same point. For me, we've seen Colston Loveland be ranked like 7 for Daniel Jeremiah.
6 in Dan Jeremiah's top 100. That is crazy. Okay, that is just wrong.
I don't really get how you can have Loveland that high when he doesn't really offer you that much as a blocker. And I think, obviously, there's like the Travis Kelce style of tight ends, but they're a lot rarer. Like I know he's a good receiving threat. I completely appreciate that, and he is a very good receiving threat. In many ways, he kind of be like my wide receiver 3 if you'd consider Warren as a pure tight end. But I just don't get how you can have him higher than, I don't know. He's nowhere near Tyler Warren for me. I think the value of a tight end comes from the ability to be a threat in the run game and be a threat as a blocker, because it means you then get favorable matchups in the passing game. It means that they can't afford to put a slot corner or a safety on you, because if it's a run play, you block them off the screen. So that's kind of what caps Loveland for me. I think we're going a bit against the grain here with the way that Loveland's been trending, which is astronomically up. But yeah, I think 22 for me is as high as I would put Loveland.
I agree. I think the only thing, Dom, is that he's the highest floor player in this draft for me. I think his floor is 10-year NFL career, averaging 800 yards a season, which is nothing to turn your nose up at, but he's never going to be a dominant player in a position where it's hard to find them, but I think Tyler Warren is. He'll never be that Tyler Warren level. I don't think he'll ever be a game-changing level, but I just think it's because he's good in the run game, useful hands, good route running, plug-and-play starter from day one. That is boosting his draft stock massively.
I just kind of wonder with Loveland, like, I love Dalton Kincaid as a player and I loved him even more as a prospect. But we've kind of seen his limitations in the league, right? Like, and that's with a damn good team with the Bills and with a damn good quarterback in Josh Allen. And so for me, that's kind of part of why I've kind of pumped the brakes a bit, because it's like, well, if you're just a kind of power slot, then are you gonna be that that useful? And I like Loveland. I'm not trying to. And Kincaid. I'm not trying to bash one with the other, but yeah, I think 22 is a sweet spot for me. And then who remind me who you had after 22?
Josh Simmons, who I talked about, Kenneth Grant, who used to have done Michael Williams. So I think we've discussed all of those players. So Dom, I want to hear yours 21 through 25.
So 21, I've got Mike Green.
Oh, okay, fine. I can just about tolerate that.
21, I've got Ezeraku, Williams, Green, 19, 20, 21. Like, I like all three of those guys. Genuinely, I think the edge class is really good. And I do like Mike Green. I really like Mike Green, actually. 22, Corson Loveland. And then 23, new. This is where it might get a bit saucy for me.
Yeah.
Jaden Higgins, the wide receiver from Iowa State.
Okay, wait, that's above Igbuka. That's above, a few wide receivers.
Yeah, it's above Egbuka. I love Jaden Higgins. I love Jaden Higgins. I spoke about him in a mock draft I did recently by myself on the channel. Like, for me, Higgins, kind of what I've looked at with the wide receivers is, can you offer me wide receiver one ability? If so, then I feel way more comfortable taking you in the first than can you be a nice number two? And that's what I think Egbuka is. And we'll talk about Egbuka when I come on to him a bit later. I think I'll just talk about Jaden Higgins for now. I think Higgins can be that true wide receiver one, X receiver. He's got the height, 6'4", got the physicality, 214 pounds. He moves really well for his size. He's good against press, got good releases, good ball skills, only 2 drops, 58% contested catch rate. Like, I love what Higgins could be. I don't think he's quite there yet. Like, I don't think he is out the box, a outside wide receiver. I think a lot of people project him as a power slot. I would definitely give Higgins the chance to play out wide. And I think with Higgins, you have that alpha potential, which is kind of what I've been looking for in this whole class, right? And that's why I kind of loved Trey Harris when I first watched Harris. Because for me, if I'm drafting a wide receiver in the first round, I want a 1. If that makes sense. Like, I think you can get a nice 1.5, a nice 2 at the top of the second, which is kind of where they've traditionally gone, a Lad McConkey maybe. And that's why I've got Egbuka lower. Well, actually, I've got Egbuka at 25. So I might as well whip him in here now. And you have him higher, don't you, Egbuka?
Yeah, I had him at 18. I just think, I understand what you're saying, and I think there's definitely holds weight. But I just think he's too far away. And I think for a first round receiver, you expect production. And he just screams top of the second to me.
I think that's where he will go.
Yeah, because I just think having a plug and play out the box number 2, which Egbuka will be a great one of. I just think, like you said, is how likely is this guy going to become a superstar? How likely is this guy going to become a starter? Higgins for me is just too much of a throw at the dartboard, whereas Egbuka is almost your hand of a clean and polished prospect.
Yeah, it's that. What do you value more? Are you going for potential or are you going for floor? Are you going ceiling? Are you going floor? And I think Egbuka does come with a really high floor, which is why he's 25 for me. Still a first rounder. I think it's really valuable. Like, you're going to get out of the box, like I say, put him on the field day one. He'll produce. He's going to get 850 yards minimum in his first year in the league. I guarantee it, right? But I don't think he's a good enough athlete to ever remotely be a 1. I think McConkey has the athleticism to be that 1.5. I think Egbuka's capped at a 2. And I just don't think he has the high-end traits. I know he's got the production, and I know he's got a high floor, but I really struggle with Egbuka. But again, in that kind of like Chris Godwin, in that kind of classic wide receiver 2 molds, there's value in just, if you were drafting Chris Godwin now with his career and how he's produced it in the back end of the first, you'd sprint the pick in because it's the known quantity. So I really struggle with them. With whoever's 25 for me, we'll talk about now quickly because I love him. That's Gray Zabel.
Yes, okay. I've got him at 30. Yeah, you talk about him, Dom.
I love Gray Zabel. For me, obviously he plays tackle at NDSU. He will be a guard or a centre. I think he's the best pure interior offensive line projection in this draft. And obviously Will Campbell, if you're thinking about him as a guard, would be before him. But I think there's questions about tackle. I think Gray Zabel is definitely not going to play tackle. He can in a pinch, but he's just so damn good. Like, he's just... At the Combine, did fantastically. At the Senior Bowl, that's where he first really kind of rose to prominence for me. And I just think he's so good. He allows you to play. He can play anywhere along the offensive line. And I genuinely mean anywhere. He can play tackle, he can play guard, he can play center, and he can play anywhere in between. And I just think it allows you to, as an offense, get your best 5 out there. And that's super valuable. And I think he's just a really good player. I love him at the Texans for me at 25. I know it's not exciting, but he's just that good.
I'm a big fan as well. It's a bit difficult for us in the UK to get our hands on NDSU film, but I'd love to watch more Gray Zabel if I could.
He's so good. Twitter's weirdly the place where you can find some great cut-ups. But then
Okay,
26 to 30. Or I accidentally did my 25, didn't I?
Oh, yeah. I did 26 to 30.
26 to 30.
Okay, I'm happy you're not in the room with me because I think we might have a physical fight in my 26 to 30.
Oh my god, it's going to be Jackson Dart.
Jackson Dart. So
Oh.
at 26, I got Derek Harmon.
Oh my god.
27, Omar in Hampton. 28, Jackson Dart. 29, Shamar Stewart. And 30, Walter Nolan.
Oh my god. Jackson Dart.
Yeah.
That's revolting.
I don't think it's revolting at all. I'm so much higher in this quarterback class than you, Dom.
All right, talk to me about Jackson Dart.
Jackson Dart, he's a very polarizing prospect, to say the least.
Yeah.
But I think he will be a starting quarterback in the NFL, and I think he'll be one for a long time. I think he's a big fan of his deep ball, big fan of his vertical passing game. He's got plus athleticism, good decision making. The biggest downside is that Ole Miss, he wasn't asked to do a whole lot. You don't really see that many NFL plays on film, but you do see the talent that is able to make them. That's why he's number 28 for me. He had good production and he's got good traits, which for me is an end of a first rounder.
28 for Jackson Dart. Oh my goodness. Now, no, Jackson Dart for me is not going to be in the top 50. I don't think The thing is for Jackson Dart is that I get that he's a prospect that people like. And I get that he is a ball of clay. He's 21 years old, got better every year, has the tools to be a starting quarterback. He only had 30 snaps under center. You can't. He's not fit to start year one. He's not going to start year one. So when you say he's going to be a starter for a long time, we can't be a starter straight away. So I think to have a quarterback that has to be a project, that has to sit, I think having him. Well, to be fair, actually, that's not necessarily the fairest. Because I had JJ McCarthy in as like a back end of the first, late second last year, and he was much the same. But I think JJ McCarthy is a much better prospect now than Jackson Dart is, with the muddiness that the Ole Miss offense brings and the half field reads and the single and like the locking into his first read stuff. Jackson Dart is firmly a quarterback that I would let someone else draft. Like, I appreciate that if you want Dart, you're going to have to take him probably in the second round when it's all said and done, right? I don't see him as a second rounder, so I would let someone else draft him, and I'd be pretty happy about that, because there are guys that I do like more after him at the value that they would be at, if that makes sense. Like, I really like Will Howard. I also really like Tyler Show. They will be available later, and I feel much better about taking them in that value.
The big thing with me for Dart, Dom, is I think his negative traits or his negative plays or whatever you want to call them, I think they're fixable or they're coachable.
Yeah, no, definitely. I
think that's for me is the most exciting thing about a prospect like that, because sometimes you see these prospects with massive arms who are never going to be accurate and never make the right reads. You do see Dart do that. And I think is quarterbacks in college never really play under center that often. There's always going to be a transition. There's always going to be a jump. He's not ready to play right away, but with a good offensive coordinator and a good mental quarterback, I can see him doing okay.
See, what I think with Jackson Dart, and specifically Jackson Dart more so than anyone, is that if he went to the Rams as the Matthew Stafford heir apparent and was able to sit for a minimum of a year, because Stafford will be there this year, and I think he signed a 2-year contract, I think, so for the next 2 years, I think that would be perfect. But if you're drafting Dart to be a starter, I think he's going to be drinking through a fire hose, and I think it's going to massively overwhelm him, and he will be that classic, almost like Matt Corral-esque, like that classic, just like flame out.
Deshaun Kaiser, just chucked in the deep end.
Exactly, because I was blinded by Dart. Recap those players.
So I've got Derek Harmon at 26. So I think just very good plug and play defensive tackle.
I got him at 27. I love Derek Harmon. Again, I'm with you there, Nu. I think he's a great plug and play player. Like, I think he's good against the pass. He's got the most pressures from the defensive tackle position in college football this year.
Oh, didn't know that.
Yeah. He's got, let me get it up exactly. He's got 55 pressures first, 17.6 pass rush win rate, which goes up to 26.9% on true pass sets. So I think we're getting a really good pass rusher. I think you've got someone with a high motor that can disrupt the run. He's got a strong anchor against the run. And yeah, he's more of a disruptor than a finisher. Only 5 sacks, 55 pressures. And he can play a bit high, as well as pad levels a bit high. But I think he does exactly what he says on the tin. Good versus the run, good versus the pass. Not a game changer by his own right, but force multiplier.
Yeah. And I've got Omar and Hampton at 27, who I think is a first-round running back.
I've got Hampton at 28.
Oh, I love that. And then Shamar Stewart at 29. You know I'm famously low on, you're very high on. We're going to argue about this till the cows come home in April, but we're still going to do it. And then Walter Nolan at 30, who I've also heard some pretty bad character concerns about. Again, sort of just in the end of the first, top of the second. I didn't really quite know where to put him in 30, sort of just seemed like the right spot. I couldn't really find a place for him that I liked.
So I've got, at 26, I've got Siobhan Ravel, the cornerback from ECU. I really like Siobhan Ravel. I think he is, like, if you're trying to build like a corner in a lab, like, he's one of the people that would kind of come out of that, if you will. Like, he's got a dog mentality. He'll bully guys at the line of scrimmage. I have him over Barron. I think what he offers from the cornerback position in terms of like that press man ability and can kind of lock someone down, which I don't think Barron can quite do. I like that more. I think he can play quite fast and loose. I think he's a bit of like a high risk, high reward player, like low floor, high ceiling kind of guy.
Yeah.
And he's coming off an ACL tear. But I really like Siobhan Ravel. I've got Derek Harmon at 27, already spoken about him. 28 Amari in Hampton. I'm with you, New. First round running back. He's got the production. He's got the physical traits. Like, I think he's a lock to go in the first round, to be fair. And since you've said it, New, I think you're a bit of a pioneer for Hampton to the Chargers. I've seen Brett Coleman saying it. Like, you were ahead of the curve there. Credit where it's due. Credit where it's due. I've got Nick Scouton, the other Texas A&M rusher, at 29. So we've both got a pair of Texas A&M edge rushers there. I think Nick Scouton will be more of a second round pick, but I think if you get the Purdue version of Scouton, you're going to get a better player than if you get the A&M version. And then I've got Josh Connolly Jr.
Okay.
Someone that I think needs developing. I think he can start, and I think he will be drafted to start. But I think it's going to take him. I think it's going to be one of those tackles that is going to struggle in year one, and I think he's definitely a tier below the other tackles that I have there at the moment. Then, New. So, give me 31 to 35.
Yeah, I just want to quickly say, Dom, that I think this draft class is getting too much hate for the talent it has. I think
so do I.
And I think it's because it's not super top heavy, but genuinely the difference between 20 and 40 is marginal.
Yeah.
And when I was doing that, I was chopping and changing these players. And you've mentioned players why they should be 25, but I'm agreeing with you even if they have them much lower. So
Yeah.
I want to stop this draft class hate because I think it's much deeper and much stronger, but a bit more in the middle than top heavy.
Yes, yeah, definitely. I think it peaks with 1 through 5, and then it kind of drops off, and then it kind of picks back up again at the teens, really.
Yeah.
31.
So I've got Siobhan Ravel, who just said injury
Nice.
concerns, but I'm a big fan of him as well. Jalen Walker, 32.
I got Jalen Walker 34.
Yeah, Benjamin Morrison, 33. Donovan Azeriku, 34. And Matthew Golden, the wide receiver, at number 35 out of Texas.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, so I've got Jahdae Barron, cornerback from Texas. We've spoken about him. More of a zone guy. I've got Travian Henderson at 32. I've
Three
snuck
first
in.
round running backs.
I've snuck in it. I go back to the fact that Jahmyr Gibbs, and I don't think Henderson is as good as Gibbs, obviously, otherwise he'd be higher than this. But I just go back to Jahmyr Gibbs and I think about what he's done for that Lions offense. I go back to what a great player he is with his profile, and he's not the most rounded of running backs in the sense that he wouldn't be a bell cow. But I think if Henderson is drafted with more of a power back there, I think he's just going to be so good. And I would at 32, like you say, it's so interchangeable with the guys from 32 to 42. I just had to get Travian Henderson in there. I've got 33, I've got Azario Thomas, the cornerback from Florida State, big press man cornerback. I like him as a top of the second, kind of Kamari Lassiter-esque kind of
Joey
pick.
Porter kind of style.
Yeah,
player.
exactly. Not that they play the game the same way as any of those guys, but just in that value, you can kind of get a sneaky decent cornerback at the top of the second, end of the first. And then I've got Jalen Walker at 34. For me, he's not a first round pick, so I had him outside of the quote unquote first round. But I get that he's an athletic freak, and I do think he's really good as that quarterback spy role. And I do think that someone like the Vikings, who love positional versatility, will look at Jalen Walker, his ability to play linebacker, cover, and rush the passer, will really like that. I just think he doesn't really do any of those things particularly well. But Walker, it wouldn't shock me in a few years he was a much better player than he is now. And then let's talk about it. Matthew Golden at 35. He is now some people's wide receiver one over Teta and McMillan.
Ridiculous.
Yes. Take it away.
Yeah, so he's a good player and he's a speedster, but he never had the production, doesn't have the hands. I don't like his hands too much. Route running's a bit limited, but he obviously has the physical traits that make him a top 50 player. I think it's as simple as that. You don't need to overanalyze a player that runs a 4.29. He runs fast and his hands are okay. That's probably good enough to be a wide receiver 2. If you think he's a wide receiver one, you're completely and utterly wrong.
I find that bonkers. I find that absolutely bonkers. He's 5'11", 191 pounds. He is not a wide receiver 1. And I think that, he ran quick. I never saw the 4.29 speed on tape. Never. I think as an athlete on tape, at least, he looked fine, adequate, not bad. I'm not trying to say he's not athletic and it's a concern. It's not, but I just did not see that level of athlete on tape. I think he's a good route runner. I think he's got good ball tracking deep down the field. But I just don't see him as being more than a nice wide receiver 2. I'd rather have a Meko Buko over Matthew Golden if I'm being perfectly honest with you here, Nu. And it's just, I cannot believe the hype that he's now getting. I find it like insane. Like even 35, it's
Is he on
hard
the
now
top
for
50?
me. Sorry?
Is he in your top 50 at all?
Matthew Golden, he's 35. He's 35, which is why I'm talking about him now. Like, I just, part of me wanted to put him lower, but then I kind of was thinking that I would be doing that just to push back against the hype that he's getting, and I wouldn't be like fairly evaluating him as a pure prospect. But Matthew Golden in the first round, I don't think I can even get on board with that, to be honest. I'd rather have Higgins, I'd rather have Ibuka, I'd rather have Burden, I'd rather have McMillan. And I think it's not even, I think it's pretty clear for me. I would rather have, I think Golden is the top of tier 2, if that makes sense for me.
Yeah.
In terms of these, I might put Ibuka in that, but like Ibuka's just such a sure thing that he kind of comes into tier 1 as a default. Now, 36 to 40, getting into the meat and potatoes here.
Yeah, so I've got Gray Zabel, big fan,
Nice.
offensive guard, offensive tackle, centre, whatever. Jack Sawyer, the edge out of Ohio State at 37. Nick
Nice.
Skelton at 38. Elika Yamano, the wide receiver out of Stanford at 39.
No, you higher on Ayamanal than me now.
And then I got your Jaden Higgins, your Pookie, at 40. Wide receiver out
Jaden
of Iowa
Higgins is
State.
Pookie. Okay, all right. Talk to me then about Elikai Manor, because I've got him at 43. I love him and I always have done. But you're now higher on him than I am.
Yes, so I was not on this train for such a long time because I was worried about the injury concerns. And, you know, mostly just because you liked him, I just decided to dislike it because all you would talk about. But I watched and rewatched his game against Colorado when I was making this list.
It's amazing.
And it's amazing. It's one of the best games of film outside of Tessa McMillan in the first game of the season when he got about 300 yards. It's one of the best tapes of the season. And that game alone against a potential top 5 pick, against a potential number 1 overall pick, has to be in your top 50.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Ayamanor is. I think I've almost got him too low at 43, to be fair. I've got now Shadur Sanders at 36.
Okay, fine. Not a first round talent.
Not a first round talent for me. I'm not drafting Shadur Sanders in the first round. And actually, I think that if you draft him in the second, for me, it's a question of when you draft a quarterback in the first round, you are more tied to them than if you draft them in the second. Right, we've seen that already with Will Levis. Already ready to cut ties if needs be. If it was a stronger draft class, I definitely would be. And I also think that Sanders would kind of put you in quarterback purgatory. I don't think he'll be bad. I just don't think he'll be very good. I just don't really... He doesn't have the physical tools. The offense he comes from in Colorado is so not pro style whatsoever. And I know a lot of college quarterbacks don't come from that. But like, there's so many screens. There's so many like... I just don't like Sanders enough. I would let someone else draft Sanders. I've got Nick Emanwari, the safety, at 37 there. Not a first round player for me, but just outside. Then I got at 38. Quinshon Judkins, the running back from Ohio State. Quinshon was someone that rose to me after the combine. I think when I see that he has those really good athletic tools, which I don't think I always saw when I was looking at his tape, I was like, you know what? I'm willing to give you a bit of a bump for that because the production's there. And if you can, you know, if maybe in more of a starring role, he'd be even better. Then I've got Benjamin Morrison, the cornerback from Notre Dame at 39. An injury concern there's kind of bumped him down. I think you might be getting quite a good player if he is healthy. And then at 40, I've got Trey Harris. And I actually think I'd swap Ayamanor and Harris looking at this now. I'd put Ayamanor at 40. I'd put Harris at 43. I think I'd trust Ayamanor ahead of Harris, I think.
Yeah, I'm slightly low on Harris. He doesn't make my top 50, but I still think he's a very good player. So Dom, quickly, I just want to ask you, what do you think about the depth of this wide receiver class? Do you think it's worth not taking a receiver in the first because you can get a good player in the second? Or do you still think take a player in the first?
I think the sweet spot for this draft, as it is in so many other drafts, is top of the second, kind of like second round. I think that's where you're going to get most likely Higgins if he doesn't go in the first. I think you're going to get Harris, you're going to get Ayamanor, you're going to get Jack Besh, who I really like. I think Jack Besh make my top 50? I don't think he did. But I think it's a good wide receiver class. I really like Jalen Knoll, the cornerback, the wide receiver from Iowa State as well. Like, I think it's again, apart from McMillan, and I think a lot of people are lower on McMillan, which is why I think people are lower on this wide receiver class as a whole. Because you've got Travis Hunter, who's kind of like not really a full-time wide receiver and not being really evaluated as such. He's kind of like his own prospect. So if you're not that high on McMillan, then you're going to think this wide receiver class is weak. But I think the depth is actually really good. Like, I think if you need a wide receiver, you can get one in the second, in the third, and you're going to get a starting player. So I like it.
I completely agree. People are being far too harsh on, you know, especially as 40 to 60. It could be all receivers and running backs. And I don't think I'd have a problem with that.
Yeah, nice. And then give me 41 to 45.
So 41, I got Xavier Watts, safety out of Notre Dame. 42, I got Jack Besh, wide receiver at TCU. 43, I've got my second ranked guard, Tyler Booker, defensive guard out of Alabama. 44, Landon Jackson. And 45, a bit of my guy, Torrey Horton, the wide receiver out of Colorado State.
You do like Horton. You do like Horton.
I'm a big fan of Horton. I just think these are all players that are sort of they either plug and play or developmental. I think Landon Jackson is a definition of plug and play. I didn't really want to include him in my top 50 because he's really not a my guy. But anything else, I'd sort of just be doing it for the sake of doing it. He is a top 50 ranked player, if you know what I mean. But he's never going to do anything exceptional. Jack Besh, I think, is a great receiver prospect. And Torrey Horton, I agree, similar to that, Jaden Higgins does have that number one outside potential, which is why he sneaks to my top 50.
Nice. Well, we'll talk about Besh at the end.
Yeah.
And then who else did you have there?
Xavier Watts, safety out of Notre Dame. I think
I need to watch more of him. I think I need to watch more of Watts because I see him being ranked above Emma Warrior as well sometimes. So I need to get onto him. I've got Walter Nolan at 41. I think Nolan's not a first round prospect for me. I think he plays like a headless chicken. I think he can detonate some offensive linemen every now and then, but I think he's just plays too fast, too loose. I've got Darius Alexander, the defensive tackle from Toledo. I really like what he offers. We spoke about him in the combine episode. Elikai Manor, the wide receiver from Stanford at 43. And then I've got Arianti Ursary, the offensive tackle from Minnesota at 44. I just think I could see someone like the Chiefs reaching on him at the back end of the first. You know, like I don't think he'll be I think he's a tier down as well from the other offensive tackles. But I think someone's going to take a swing on Ursary to be a starter. And then at 45, I've got Cam Scatterbo, just the Aura King. I think that might be a bit too high. I'm not going to lie. I think that might be a bit too high. I will admit that might be a little bit rich for Scatterbo, but I love Scatterbo. Now, let's take us home, New. 46 to 50.
So 46, my top back center. I've got Jared Wilson out of Georgia.
Oh, nice.
47, Terrence Ferguson, tight out of Oregon. 48, Sean
nice.
Junkins, as you've already mentioned. 49, Trey Amos, cornerback out of Ole Miss. And 50, I've got Dylan Sampson, the running back out of Tennessee.
So who are those first two?
Jared Wilson and Terrence Ferguson.
Talk to me about Terrence Ferguson.
Terrence Ferguson is probably the best athlete in this tight end class. Ran the fastest 40, had great production at Oregon, and he's much closer to Colson Loveland than Colson Loveland is to Tyler Warren.
Yeah, I back that.
And I think he's a top 50. If someone were to take him at the top of the second round, I think that is an absolute home run of a pick. Don Farr Dynasty draft. I've been looking to draft him.
We've got Brock Bowers, mate. We don't need it.
Oh, really?
And Tucker Kraft. We're running 12 personnel in our Dynasty team.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of him, and I just thought had to include him in the bottom of the top 50. Love my tight ends. Got to shout out my fellow positional group. And
so I've got 46, I've got Tyler Booker. I do not think Tyler Booker is a first-round talent whatsoever. I think he's really limited by his movement ability and just like the offensive system he'd need to fit in. Like he's not going to reach block, he's not going to be able to zone block, he's not going to be able to like pull very fast. Like if you're a team like the Patriots, maybe at the top of the second, you'd look at him, but I do not like Tyler Booker in the majority of fits, really, which is why he's so low for me. I've got Jack Sawyer at 47. Again, someone that I've softened on since our Edge Rush video, our Edge Rush rankings. I just think he does kind of lack the elite physical tools and the elite athleticism that you often need at edge, but I do like what he offers you as a floor player. Then I've got Cameron Williams. You once mocked him to the Texans, famously.
We're not happy, man.
Money on mock draft. He's a developmental tackle. I think you're going to draft and stash that guy. I've got Caleb Johnson, the running back from Iowa. And then at 50, I've got Jack Besh. And we'll end up by talking about Jack Besh. Jack Besh, for me, is a bit like one of those players where if I was drafting at the top of the second, I know it'd be a bit of a reach, but I would consider taking him. Because he's definitely going to be better than some of the other guys that might come before him. Like, I don't think Besh is going to be a 1. I don't think he projects like that, like a Trey Harris, like a Elikai Manor, or like a Jaden Higgins. But I think that Besh is that classic, maybe like 1.5. Like, I really like what he offers. More so, I'd say, than Golden, to be perfectly honest with you. Like, I think he's a great blocker. He's got fantastic hands. I think he's so much better than what you see if you're looking at him purely on paper. He's greater than the sum of his parts, and I really hope the Texans draft Jack Besh. Like that's what I can say. Like, he's someone that I really like, and I think it's gonna be fantastic wherever he goes.
I keep saying this whole time. I agree. Big fan of Jack Besh. Hopefully, mid second, top of the second is where I have him ranked.
Right. So that wraps up our top 50. I think it got off to a pretty turbulent start with some pretty crazy rankings.
I stand by it.
Pretty crazy rankings at the beginning from New, but I think we mellowed out there towards the end, had a bit more of a consensus there. But let us know what you think. Let us know in the comments. Do you think that we had some players too high, some players too low, some players just right? Feel free to let me or New know if you don't agree with what we've said here. You will see, obviously, the big boards on the screen here in the graphics, so you'll be able to know exactly who we're talking about and where they're ranked. But I've been your host, Dom Corbs. That's been my co-host, Nick Corbs. Make sure you subscribe for more NFL draft content, and we'll see you on the next video.
See ya.